You have been told a story about yourself since the day you were born. It's a neat story, neatly packaged, written by parents, teachers, society, culture, everyone but you. It has chapters you never chose, values you never examined, and an ending you've quietly accepted without question. But here's the unsettling truth. This story, your story, is not yours at all. The ancient philosopher Socrates had a warning that cuts like glass through time. The unexamined life is not worth living. But most of us live exactly that, an unexamined life. Not because we are lazy, but because we are terrified of what we might find if we start asking the hard questions. Every night before you fall asleep, there's a brief moment when the noise dies down. No phone, no people, just you. And in that silence, there's a flicker, a small awareness that something is off, that you are not fully where you're supposed to be, that you are perhaps performing a life rather than living it. You bury it quickly. Tomorrow is busy. There's work to do. The kids need things. There's laundry, bills, the endless little maintenance tasks of survival. But the question waits for you. It always does. Science has a name for this gnawing feeling, cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort we experience when our actions and our beliefs are misaligned. According to a 2015 study from the University of California, this discomfort doesn't just create anxiety, it literally drains mental energy, impairing decision-making over time. And so the paradox emerges. The longer you avoid facing yourself, the less energy you have to change. Let's put it plainly. Your avoidance is writing your destiny in invisible ink. If you don't pick up the pen, someone else will, and they will not write a story in your favor. The German philosopher Nietzsche pushed this even further. Become who you are. It sounds simple, poetic even, but what he left unsaid is the most brutal part. To become who you are, you must first tear apart the false layers, the polite masks, the roles you inherited, the lies you've told yourself so often that they've calcified into identity. And that process is not gentle, it is not pleasant, it is not Instagram inspirational, it is war, a war against your own comfort. Consider the way you start most mornings. The alarm rings, you check your phone, you slip into autopilot. The mind follows pre-built grooves of thought, emotion, and reaction. Days blur. Years pass. From a neuroscientific perspective, this isn't random. It's neuroplasticity in action. Your brain literally rewires itself to make repeated behaviors automatic. That's great when you're building useful habits. It's devastating when the habits are the chains keeping you in place. If you wake up anxious, scroll social media, dread work, and push aside meaningful action, your brain is learning that this is normal. And the longer you live in that cycle, the harder it becomes to imagine anything else. Which is why change is so violent. You're not just changing habits, you're dismantling an entire neurological architecture, one built over years of repetition. And here is where Kant enters the conversation. He argued that freedom is not the ability to do whatever you want, but the ability to live by laws you choose for yourself. Most of us confuse freedom with indulgence, chasing impulses, comfort, and convenience. Real freedom is self-authorship, the deliberate choice to govern your own mind, values, and actions, even when the world pulls you in 100 different directions. So tonight, before we go further, I'm going to ask you to do something uncomfortable, not tomorrow, not when you have time, tonight. Get a notebook, sit in silence, write down, without censorship, every truth you have been avoiding about your life. The job you hate but justify keeping, the relationship that drains you but you're too afraid to leave, the dreams you've abandoned but still ache for when you see someone else living them. This is not about self-punishment. It's about evidence, about finally putting on paper the reality you've been trying to escape. And when you feel the urge to stop, When it starts to sting, keep writing. That sting is the doorway. That sting is the first sign that you're not sleepwalking anymore. Because as the Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught, if you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. He didn't mean by others. He meant by yourself, by the part of you that resists growth. You have to let the old story think you're a fool before you can become the author of a new one. Change begins with honesty, but it survives through structure. Without a framework, insight fades. You go to bed with conviction and wake up with excuses. Let's break the process of rewriting your life into 3 intertwined disciplines: self-examination, radical choice-making, and sustained action. 1. Self-examination, the mirror and the scalpel. Socrates wasn't advocating idle introspection. He meant interrogation. To examine your life means to pull apart your beliefs, values, and patterns until you can see what they're made of. Modern psychology gives us a tool for this: cognitive behavioral journaling. By documenting not just your actions but the thoughts and emotions that trigger them, you create a map of the mental loops that keep you stuck. But here's where philosophy deepens the practice. Nietzsche warns against replacing one dogma with another. Don't just swap "I'm not good enough" with "I'm amazing" and call it growth. Both are narratives and both can blind you. Instead, look for what is verifiably true. What actions produce results? Which beliefs align with reality, not just comfort? 2. Radical choice-making, burning the ships. History gives us a vivid metaphor. When Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés landed in the New World, he ordered his men to burn their ships. Retreat was no longer an option. Whether you approve of his mission or not, the principle is powerful. Remove the escape routes that keep you tethered to the old life. From a behavioral science standpoint, this aligns with commitment devices, structures that lock you into a course of action. A 2016 Harvard study showed that people who set public commitments, financial stakes, or irreversible deadlines were far more likely to follow through than those who relied on willpower alone. In philosophical terms, this is Kierkegaard's leap of faith, a decisive jump into the unknown, not because you have proof it will work, but because staying still is no longer acceptable. The radical choice is not always quitting your job tomorrow or moving to another country. Sometimes it's smaller but just as irreversible. Deleting the apps that numb you, ending a draining friendship, enrolling in a course you've put off for years. The point is to make it impossible to slide back into autopilot. 3. Sustained action. The discipline of becoming Kant reminds us that freedom requires discipline. In practice, this means designing your environment and routines so they push you toward the life you've chosen. This is where neuroscience comes back into play. Habit formation relies on cue, routine, and reward. You can't just decide to be different. You must rewire your reward system so that the actions of your new story become satisfying in themselves. Meditation, exercise, deep work. These aren't trendy self-help cliches. They are neurological leverage points. Each one strengthens your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, self-control, and long-term planning. The Stoics practiced premeditatio malorum, imagining worst-case scenarios in detail, not to create anxiety, but to strip fear of its power. By visualizing hardship, you train yourself to see that discomfort is survivable, that the monsters in your mind shrink under direct light. The role of silence. Science now confirms what mystics and monks have known for centuries. Prolonged silence changes the brain. A 2013 study in brain structure and function found that 2 hours of silence per day led to significant growth in the hippocampus, the brain region linked to learning, memory, and emotional regulation. This is not just about being calm. Silence is the forge where the fragments of your scattered attention melt back into focus. Nietzsche wrote, "The greatest events, they are not our loudest, but our stillest hours. If you fear silence, you fear seeing yourself without disguise. And that fear is the very reason you must sit in it." The narrative shift. Every philosopher from Aristotle to Sartre, every psychologist from Jung to Viktor Frankl agrees on this. Humans are storytelling creatures. We survive by turning chaos into narrative. The danger is that once we settle on a story, we cling to it, even when it poisons us. The way out is not to deny the past, but to edit its meaning. Frankl, a Holocaust survivor, wrote in A Man's Search for Meaning, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." He didn't mean romanticizing tragedy. He meant that you can reinterpret your suffering in a way that fuels you instead of breaks you. You don't erase the old chapters. You decide what they mean in the context of the story you are now choosing to write. And that is the ultimate philosophical act. Not to be at the mercy of the story you inherited, but to consciously craft the one you will leave behind. There will never be a perfect moment to start. The right time is a mirage. It moves away every time you get close. The moment is now precisely because it's imperfect. The messiness, the fear, the uncertainty, these are not obstacles to beginning. They are the raw materials of transformation. The Greek philosopher Heraclitus said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and he is not the same man. You are not the same person you were yesterday." The river has already moved. The question is whether you will move with it or let it carry you someplace you never intended to go. So tonight, before the world interrupts again, take the notebook. Write the truths you've been avoiding. Identify one irreversible action you can take in the next 24 hours to align your life with your chosen story. Not 10 things, not a perfect plan. One action. Because change does not begin with a grand gesture. It begins with a single cut in the old script, a scene removed, a new one added. And here's what I want you to remember. Silence is your editing room. Honesty is your scalpel. Choice is your ink. Action is the pen stroke that makes the new scene real. Key takeaways: face the truth, without filters. Your first step is unflinching self-examination. Philosophy and science agree. Without clarity, no change is possible. Remove escape routes. Use commitment devices and irreversible choices to prevent sliding back into old patterns. Design for discipline. Structure your environment and routines so they reinforce your chosen path. Reinterpret the past, like Frankl. Change the meaning of your past to fuel your future. Act before you're ready. The perfect moment will never come. The smallest irreversible step today is worth more than 1,000 intentions tomorrow. The story of your life is not a single, unalterable script. There are countless versions waiting in the wings. The only question that matters now is, which one will you choose to write?